Everybody is welcome now. Hello, it's great to see everybody. I'm just going to take a quick second to undo the waiting room so everybody can just come on in. There we go. It's so good to see you all. Let's see. Before we begin, and I'll give folks a couple more seconds to arrive, I just wanted to say a special thank you to Ann Chadwick, who is my co-host today. And also a huge thank you to all of you for joining me and for the first class I've taught in a really long time. I hope y'all ready to get your plant on. And a thanks to Melinda, who can't be here right now, who she helped me go through the slides last night. So a special thank you to her as well. While we're waiting, if you could all please take a second to write in the chat what your favorite fruits or vegetables are, just for funsies, just so I can look later and see what people like. I would appreciate it. And it is totally fine to turn off your video. That's totally fine. I see that Ann Roth said that, so that's fine. So yeah, if you could just write your favorite fruits or veggies. Cool. I see blueberries. Ooh, nectarines, carrots. Ooh. Ooh, wonderful. Dragon fruits, bananas, Brussels sprouts, peaches, avocados. This is going to be exciting. Blueberries, broccoli. I don't think we won't be able to get to all of them, but I think we're going to get to a ton of the ones that I see listed here. And if anybody ever wants to talk about their favorites one-on-one, you can always contact me. So this is going to be fun. And I think that with that said, we will get started on our lesson. So here's how it will work. Each week we'll study one family, and we'll look a little bit deeper inside the flowers and inside of some of the, the fruits and veggies that are part of that family. And we'll get used to sort of seeing the characteristics of that. And the hope behind that is so that when you're out nature journaling or just when you're curious, it'll become easier to look inside of flowers and see patterns, so that you don't have to know all of the families. I'll say that, I'll back up for a second and also say, I identify as a botanist, but that's not because I know a ton of plants. I don't even know half of the plants or half of the families in the world. For me, what makes me a botanist is that I'm excited about learning more about them, and that I just get excited whenever I see plants. So the idea with this isn't so that you have to memorize a ton of facts. It's just that you get used to knowing what to look for when you're looking at a flower. Okay? Makes sense? Okay, with that said, we are going to start the slideshow. 1 second, please. Share, make this big, and begin. So, welcome to our first week of plant families in our foods and nature journaling. We'll start out by letting you all take a few seconds. Well, no, we'll take 2 minutes to be precise. If you would like, you can sketch this flower. You can sketch, it doesn't have to be very detailed. You can just sketch quickly, whatever pops out to you. And I'll give you 2 minutes to do that. And then after our 2 minutes, you'll get another minute to write down little notes that you've seen about that. Like, you can write down what colors you notice, you can write down what features, and try to think, what does this remind you of? And let's start.
Yeah, Vea, it looks like Judy was asking whether you're going to be recording this and posting.
Oh, thank you. I can't see the chat at all, so I appreciate any questions you can repeat. I am recording it, though I'm undecided about posting it. It depends on how well I think I do. But I will consider posting it. And if the class goes well, I'll repeat the class and record next time and post again. So that's a good question.
Thanks. Just let us know when you decide. Thank you.
Thank you. So just a few more seconds for your sketches. And that's our timer. So now, please take an extra minute to add any words or numbers to your pictures. You can write down things it reminds you of. You can make notes about things that you saw on the plant, describing words, questions. Okay, we have our minute. So now we will go on to our next slide. And we'll do the same thing again. Please take 2 minutes to do a little sketch if you like. Just a few more seconds. And once again, please take an extra minute to add any words or numbers to your picture. Okay, and there's our minute. And one last one. And we'll take 2 minutes again. Just a few more seconds. And there's that. And one more minute, please, to add any words and numbers. Couple more seconds. And there we go. Okay, how was it? Good? Okay, and here we go. Officially, welcome to the rose family. This is our family of today. It is also called Rosaceae. Sometimes you might hear me slip up and say Rosaceae, but all my mentors say Rosaceae. And it is named, as you can probably imagine, for the Rosa genus, which is for the rose. Now, raise your hands. Does this look a little bit different than the roses that you're used to seeing when you think rose? Yeah? Yeah, for me too. And that's because we're probably used to seeing a rose that is more supermarket, something that has a ton of petals. And, well, this doesn't seem to have quite as many. That's because these are the roses that we have cultivated, but they're not the same as the ones we might see out in nature. And that's why we're going through this family today. Here is our basic flower anatomy. Don't worry if you can't remember all of these terms. I'm intentionally making it so that we're not being very vocabulary heavy today. But with our basic flower diagram, we have our stem, we have our sepals. These are the little leaf-like things that we'll often see at the base of the flower. We have our petals, we have our stamens, and our stamens are what make the pollen in the flower. And we have our pistils, which is where our seeds are. And now, if you get those two mixed up, what I remember is PSSP, Pistils make seeds and stamens make pollen, and that helps me to keep them straight. Pistils, seeds, stamens, pollen. Now that's our basic flower diagram. This is what it might look like, oh, there we go, in our rose family. So we'll have 5 of these sepals here, 5 of these little leaf-like appendages. We have 5 petals usually out in nature. We have a ton of stamens. Most botanists would call that numerous. And we have numerous pistils that kind of, and some of them add up into a little bit of a mound. Now, my challenge to us all as nature journalers is just for funsies, if we feel like it, we should probably go when we get a sample and count how many of these stamens and pistils there are. See, we may not always be able to make a trend because maybe different species within this family will have different numbers, but Jack might tell us when we see the word numerous, it just means we didn't count them. So I challenge us as botanists, or as nature journalers and botanists, to count them when we have a chance. And this is what it might look like when you hold it in your hand. Can everybody see okay? Yeah. So that's what it might look like. You can sort of see, you have a diagram here where, you might not see all of the parts, but that's sort of what it looks like when you're holding it.
It's a bit small, Ivea. If you could make it just, is there a way to make it a bit bigger?
The one on the side? Oh,
Just both of them, like.
Sorry, here, let me try. Let me see if I can make them bigger. Hang on a second. Let's go back. This one first. Make that bigger.
Just both of them, yeah. Just, oh, I see. They come one at a time.
Is that better?
The one is, yeah. The one's better.
Okay. Yeah, we'll just go with maybe just this one because it's the one we're gonna. There. Okay, let's see here. Then we'll start it again. Sorry. Oh, and then come on. Okay, there.
Yeah, that's better. Thanks.
My pleasure. And don't worry overly much about our next slide. I just wanted to reiterate again that our key characteristics are 5 sepals, 5 petals, numerous stamens, and often numerous pistils that make for a fuzzy center. So those are, and also often oval leaves that have serrated edges to them. And so when you see these characteristics, you can start to put your mind in, is this a rose? Does it evoke the feeling of a rose? And this sort of thing takes practice. It's not the sort of thing that we can get right off of the bat, but slowly over time, the more you look, the more you begin to see and kind of feel like this feels like a rose. And so these are some of the characteristics that can help a rose feel like one. But, and I can't emphasize this enough, the most important thing is to let the plant that's in front of you tell you. So always pay attention to the specimen that you have. Now, I really wanted to be able to do a dissection on camera, but I have camera problems, so I decided to take a picture instead. This is an evergreen pear that grows in our neighborhood. And so I took a picture of the flowers as I got them. You might notice about these petals that they seem very kind of wispy and delicate. Who here has ever walked down the street during the time when the cherry blossoms are blooming and then, they have petals raining everywhere? It's a little bit like pink snow, isn't it? It's so pretty. One thing I noticed, not always true, but often true about members of this family, is that a lot of them have very delicate petals that they fall off really, really easily when you touch them or when, a wind scatters them. So that's another thing that makes it feel more like a rose. And you might notice the lots and lots and lots of stamens here. So I decided to cut open just to see if we could look inside. It was difficult to quite capture it. But you can see how something connects through here and kind of goes down here into this ovary. Now, you might notice the shape of the ovary. It's a little bit like a vase, or maybe a cup. This is really characteristic of this family. They call this cup a Hypantheum. And that's a fancy word, so you don't have to remember it. But if you see this kind of cup where the ovary is, that's characteristics of a lot of members of the rose family. So I recommend at some point investigating.
And Ivea, since you can't see the chat, Heather was saying hubby was wondering what pollinates and why does it need so many flowers?
Now that's a really, really good question. And I would say investigate that more. My initial belief would be maybe bees, but I'm not totally sure because it doesn't seem like, okay, there are certain pollinators like maybe hummingbirds and butterflies where you're used to seeing them with more tubular flowers because they have either a long beak or a long proboscis where they have to really reach to get to the nectar. Now with this one, it just seems to me that it doesn't have quite so far to reach if you want to get to the stuff. Also, I noticed that at least these ones don't have a very strong smell. So I'm guessing bees. I'm thinking not beetles because the petals are so delicate and beetles tend to be a little bit klutzy, but possibly beetles as well. So that's why I'm thinking bees or possibly something else that I didn't think of. But that's, and also because you have all of the stamens, there's a lot of room to brush it all over the bees' heads. But I'd say observe and see what you notice when you're in the field, for sure. So now we reach the part where we all get hungry. You can briefly, if you like, unmute yourself and just to hear what foods do you guess might be in this family? You can unmute and just call them out if you like.
Apple.
Apple, okay.
Strawberry.
I was going to say strawberries.
Strawberry.
Pears, plums,
Pears.
plums.
So
Peaches?
peaches,
Nectarine?
anything that blooms like that.
Stone fruits.
Stone fruits? Ooh, I heard stone fruits. What else?
Rose hips.
Roses, yep. Definitely roses.
No, rose hips.
Oh, rose hips. Yes, rose hips. Anything else? Okay, here we go. And here is just one little list of some of the stuff that we have. These are some of the roses that we like to eat. And I'll be able to go through each of these as they're colored in a second. There used to be, when I learned these, there were very different subfamilies within the roses. And that's where we had certain ones that had certain things in common. But since then, they've used genetic, testing and whatnot, and they've kind of scrambled it about. So I can't teach it the way I learned it quite. But the way that I remember is that we have our berries, we have our stones, and we have our pomes. And that's how I remember it. And don't worry, you're going to get to see the information on our next slide too, if it'll let me go. There, some berries. So these are the ones in red. We have strawberries, we have raspberries, we have blackberries. Does anybody know what this flower is?
Is it a strawberry?
It is a strawberry flower. Yes, this is a strawberry flower. We have wild strawberries, we have cultivated ones, and sometimes the cultivated ones might have a couple more petals than the wild ones that at least I've seen.
Actually, my husband first guessed that was strawberry, but then what threw me was the leaves. Do not look like strawberries to me.
Mm-hmm. The leaves in the background, is that what?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the strawberry, the plants do have these leaves. They have these three, and that's, like I said too, as they get kind of altered by our cultivations, the leaves might wind up looking a bit different. And also there's kind of different kinds of strawberries too. There's alpine ones, and then there's the ones that we have here. So each of them might have slightly different looking leaves too. But yeah.
So they, so the fruits, right? All those are different fruits in the strawberry. Those are all pistils.
These?
Right. Those are all going to be the fruits, right? The strawberry is not one fruit. So are you saying earlier that each of those that becomes a seed that we call seed that's a fruit is a separate pistil.
They are, yeah.
Okay, that's cool. I was always wondering about that for strawberries.
In fact, I have one with me just for that purpose. Let me see here. Let's briefly exit so I can show you. We have our strawberry right here. So every single one of these little tiny seeds are those pistils, and they wind up making these dried fruits. So the fruits are these seeds right all over here. This big, lovely red thing here is a receptacle. It's the thing that all of the pistils are on top of. So then that way an animal might be more tempted to eat it because this is what attracts us. This is what says, hey, come help me reproduce. But yeah, you can see.
That is so cool. And then there's your example of a hybridized, compared to what I would find in the forest.
Yep, precisely.
Very cool.
This one,
you.
Yep, like this one here. I'm not sure exactly which ones would be used to kind of, but I think I remember hearing somewhere that the hybrids, one of the ones that they take is Fragaria Chalences, which is one that's local to where I live. And it's the dune strawberry. It's local to a lot of areas up and down the West Coast. And it's smaller than this by a lot. It's nowhere near this big, but it's very sweet. And that's what they select for. So, okay, I'm going to go back into our slide. Let me see here. Where is it? There it is. And yeah, so there's our strawberries. Now, this is a bit reversed from what the raspberries and the blackberries do. Instead of having a receptacle and all of the pistils growing outside of it, they have all of their little pistils and they make their fruits, but then they each have their own little like globule of sweetness and yumminess that surrounds each of them. So that's sort of, it's in a way, it's almost like a reverse strawberry is what happens with the raspberries and the blackberries. If you can picture that, you can picture the aggregates, all of the little fruits kind of, each one in one of those little juice packets. So that's one of them. And the fruits are going to probably, that's the thing about the rose family that's not intuitive, is that the fruits all take such different forms. Again, look back to the flowers. That will help you. That will steer you. Here are some of the stone fruits. I recently learned that stone fruit doesn't just refer to things in the rose family. It also refers to other things that have nothing to do with roses, like mangoes. And that's in the poison oak family. So never mind about the mangoes today, at least. So we have cherries, we have almonds, we have apricots, nectarines, plums, peaches, all of the wonderful ones that are currently sadly not in season. So I could not bring an example with me today. But I highly recommend looking inside of them. I personally am eager to look inside and see what one of those pits looks like and see if I can find anything interesting. Now would be a good season while the cherries are in bloom to draw what these flowers look like. And then later on, when you have a cherry, try to see if they look similar to each other. Again, though, this will be difficult because these have been, or at least the ones that we eat might have been very much altered. So like, who's ever seen the sakura blossoms where it has tons and tons and tons of petals? Yeah? Where it's all petals and none of this. I read somewhere that that's because they hybridized them and cultivated them so that they no longer have these stamens. The stamens got replaced each by petals, which means that certain ones aren't going to be able to reproduce on their own. That makes them dependent on us. So, and then we have the pomes, and I still don't know why they're called pomes, but we have the apples, the pears, the quinces, and the loquats. And this one here, does anyone know what this one is?
Would that be apple?
It is, it's an apple blossom. And then you can sort of see here on the side, you can see the oval shaped leaf with the serrated edges. That's very much a rose trait. I don't know how well you can see my screen, but you can see it here. Even though this rose has been very much altered, this one also has oval with serrated edges. Let's see here.
So all of the plants have serrated edges on their leaves? All of the
It's a
What,
common
how'd you pronounce it?
Rosaceae.
Rosaceae. How do you pronounce it?
I,
Rosaceae. Yeah.
I know that all my mentors say Rosaceae. Sometimes I slip up and say Rosaceae because that's how it is in my head. And I like to make the excuse Latin's a dead language anyway, so who cares? But I know that,
Good
more
for you.
professional botanists probably frown on me for saying Rosaceae and they think amateur. So Rosaceae. And again,
Rosaceae.
I hesitate to say that all of them must be like this because I don't know all of the roses in the world, but I do know that the ones that I've seen seem to match this pattern. So this is definitely a pattern worth looking for. Or here's another example here. If I can figure out how to lower this without killing myself. Okay, yeah, here we go. Hold on a second. Oh. Okay, here's hoping I don't die. I have here from the store a flowering quince.
How do I see what you're showing us?
Okay, sorry, here, let me stop the screen share and then I will. There we go. I have here a flowering quince that I got from the store that I'm trying not to let kill me because it's very sharp. And we have these little tiny leaves, but as you can see, they're oval shaped. And even though it's hard to tell, they have serrations on the edges too. You see, sort of? Is it difficult to see? Maybe a little bit, but yeah, even though this one is really, really small compared to the others, it is small and oval shaped and serrated. And then we have our lovely quince flowers here too, that look like this from the outside because they haven't completely unfurled yet. But then on the inside, lots of happy stamens and pistils in the middle. And if I count the petals, there are 5. So our patterns hold true. Okay, and now back to our slideshow.
Yeah, we got a question about what the second blossom was. Was that a cherry or?
Oh, sorry. Yes, it was. It was a cherry.
That's what we thought. Okay, thanks.
My pleasure. This class is going much faster than I thought too. So next time I might have to add some more bonus questions after what we're gonna, let me see. Sharing.
Well, then I have a bonus question because of Heather's question.
Mhm.
So as we think about why they have so many stamens, it's probably related to what pollinates it. Like, I think that those two questions almost are inseparable, maybe, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of, that was one of the things they all have that. That's not often, but they all have a lot, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so that's really interesting.
Yeah, they all have all of those stamens.
Yeah, so they aren't tubular. They're not, they're so there's got to be a reason that they would have them all. So that's kind of the little CSI going on.
The other thing too is that Rosaceae, or Rosaceae, sorry, here again I catch myself, is that Rosaceae, to my knowledge, is found almost everywhere in the world on all the continents. I don't think it's limited to any 1 or 2 continents, which would mean either that there'd be similar pollinators on all the continents, or alternatively, that's the tricky thing about evolution and all of that talk is that we think, oh, the roses evolved like this so that this thing would pollinate them, but sometimes it's just as simple as natural selection. Luckily, 2 organisms happen to be in the same place at the same time and it worked out between them. So we don't know if that means that there are the same pollinators all over the world or if there were different pollinators who wind up having a similar relationship. But that'd be fun to look for. And that's exactly the kind of questions I recommend putting in the Nature Journal. In fact, I'm going to probably put that in mine too. So I really appreciate this kind of discussion. Not in Antarctica. That's probably true, but to be fair, I don't really know if there's much of anything in Antarctica, but that's a good point, Heather. Yeah, kumquats are Rutaceae, but loquats are instead Rosaceae. So let's see here. Let's share our screen again. Yeah, this is where we wanted to be. Okay, and now it's time for my favorite part of today. And I'm going to include a poll so that you can answer the question. And don't worry, you can answer anonymously. But it is time to play Spot the Rosaceae. Woohoo! If it even allows me to do this. Okay. Oh, hey, Anne, are you able to start poll number 1, please?
Okay, let
Does it give you the
me
option or no?
look here. This is testing my skills here. Polling, launch poll. Woohoo.
Okay, so there's poll number 1. And so you can choose which one you think is the Rosaceae. Okay, take maybe another 8 seconds or so. Did everybody get a chance? Okay, and we are good. So I see that most people guessed that it was A. Some people guessed B, some guessed C, and our answer is A. A is our Rosaceae. And with this one, you can tell because it has all of these stamens here, lots and lots and lots of stamens. It's hard to see the number of the petals, but there are 5, and these ones happen to be almond blossoms. Another thing that can be really characteristic of some members of that family is that there's clusters of these blossoms together. Instead of having solitary blossoms, like what we think of when we think of roses, these have clusters. Not all of them, but some of them do. So that's another thing that might make you think Rosaceae. This one is quite lovely. This one is a hibiscus, and it does have a lot of stamens, but they're all kind of put together into a tube, and that's what makes that a little bit different. And then we have this lovely one over here. This is some kind of evening primrose, Anona Gracie. It has these long anthers here with the pollen instead of having the little short blob ones. And it doesn't really have the fuzzy center. Plus it has the 4 petals. And again, if it's hard to guess which one is which, that's okay. Don't worry about it. This is just practice, okay? And it gets easier over time. It took me years to be able to learn these families. Okay, we're gonna go to number 2. And can you please launch the next poll, Anne?
Yes, I think so. How do I do that?
Oh, wait.
Poll number 2, launch poll.
There we go.
You see it? Okay.
Yep. This one's a little bit trickier, so don't feel badly if it's difficult to guess. All right, let's just take another few seconds. Ready? Okay. And it's B. I know, challenging, right? That one is different. And that might be because it's a little harder to see, I'm not sure. But this one is a toyon, also known as a Christmas berry, and native all over California, where I live. You can see that they have somewhat fuzzy centers in here. If we were to look closer, I bet we'd find a whole bunch of stamens. And they have these wispy little petals on them, very delicate. Oop, it looks like somebody is drawing on our screen. That's okay though. And then with this one over here, this one does indeed have a lot of stamens, but they don't have quite the same fuzziness in the center. Plus it has this big, long, protruding, whoops. It's okay. Plus it has this big, long, protruding pistil here. This is a lemon. This is a lemon blossom right here. And then over here, this one I did just because I was feeling mischievous. This one's a ranunculus. I know it looks a little bit like a rose because it has all of the really gorgeous petals, but you can't quite see it, but in the center, it has just one little boop in it. So this is a ranunculus. And this one here is our rose. So here's our final round, round 3 of Spot the Rosaceae. Perfect. Thank you.
Can I say real quick that so if you dismiss the poll, like if you just close it out, or if you click on the screen, I have an iPad. If I touch the screen, it disappears, but then at the top of my iPad, it says poll in progress. So if I click on that, it makes the poll come back. I don't know if that's helpful.
Is it still up? Like, I moved mine over to the side, but I don't know what you're seeing. I'm sorry.
I have an iPad, so it shows it up, but then if I click on the screen, the poll disappears, but there's a little thing at the top in green that says poll in progress. And if I hit poll in progress, then it brings the poll back.
And I closed the poll, but then down at I'm on a computer, not an iPad. And down at the bottom where it has chat and participants, there's a poll name. And if you click on that, it brings the poll back.
Okay. Sorry, I don't know very much how to, but if anybody has concerns about it, please talk to me after so I can figure out how to do this better for next time, because I want to make sure it's as smooth sailing as possible. Okay, and I think 100% people guessed this one. It is option C, a rose. Now this one, I'd be curious to know, could some of you all shout out what to you makes this a rose? Like, how did you know? I mean, obviously, aside from the obvious, but what patterns do you see that we've talked about so far that tell you it's a rose?
I looked at the leaves.
The leaves.
Serrated leaves and the bud, because it had the leaves over it, and I bet there's 5 of them over that bud.
Awesome. What else?
The stamens and the pistils
Yes.
just look like rose now that you pointed that out earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And the petals and the leaves too. But that was what, and I don't think I would have done that before this talk today. I think I would have seen the leaves, the petals, and maybe the leaves, and oh yeah, that's a rose. But now I immediately looked at all those little stamens and pistils.
Yep. The fuzzy center. Anything else? Does anybody else see anything else that makes them think rose?
Yeah, I saw on the bud that hasn't opened, I recognize that maybe as the cup-shaped Hypanthea thing at the bottom you're talking about. Yeah.
Yes, that was the secret one that I was hoping. Thank you. Yes, the Hypantheum right here, the cup. This is another very much a rose thing. And again, not all of them will have it because there's so many different like combinations within the subfamilies, but this is definitely something to look for because a lot of them will have a cup like this. Sometimes maybe a bit subtler, but one like this as well. So that's excellent.
Having a little conversation on the chat about the toyon.
Mm-hmm.
Many of us were really shocked. Well, I'll speak for myself to learn that it's a rose. And I'm, and it's a great native plant that many of us are very familiar with, and the little trivia that was what Hollywood was named after. But does it have those serrated leaves and that little cup, everything that you were talking about before?
This one? So
yeah, because the flowers are so different, and it seems to me the leaves are really different too.
So if we look at these spent blossoms back here, can everybody see my mouse moving or no?
Yeah.
Okay, you can sort of see it. It looks like it does have a little bit of a cup underneath, because right here, these little short stubby things here are the sepals, and under here is that little cup. And then if you can look
to see, it's so small.
It is really hard to see. Sorry about that. But yeah, if you look, you can still see the little stubby cup. And if you look right here at the edges of the leaves, they are serrated. This one doesn't tend to be as much of an oval as the others. Little secret about this one, toyon's scientific name is Heteromeles arbutifolia. Now, the arbutifolia is significant. Arbutus refers to the madrone. So it's saying that the leaves are similar to that of the madrone. So in this case, it's a little different because it's not an oval, but it is still serrated. But But even if the leaves might be a bit throwing off, because I know I've been thrown off by the leaves before too, if you look at the fuzziness of the flowers and the delicateness of the petals, though, you can still see the rose in them. I remember being surprised too when I first heard that, and then I looked closer. I'm like, oh, okay, I can see it. Like this one up here, to me, that reminds me a lot of some kind of a cherry blossom with the petals about to fall off. But yeah, I had the same sort of reaction. So this is just a recap. And we have, our Rosaceae characteristics: 5 sepals, 5 petals, our numerous stamens, and our numerous pistils that sometimes, often will create a fuzzy looking center. And usually, not always, oval leaves with serrated edges. And hopefully you all will be able to go forth and be fruitful by enjoying the fruits that you might eat that are from this family and taking a closer look at them. And I don't want to say that this is an official homework assignment, but I do have a suggestion. And that is to, at some point, preferably this week, enjoy something, a member of this family, and just look at it a little bit more closely. Just, maybe you're eating a strawberry, maybe you want to like draw it a little while you're eating it, or maybe you want to use, I don't know, like a hand lens or something and look a little bit closer at the seeds. Just like, oh, what do they look? Oh, those are actually really cool looking. Yeah, so maybe you want to look a little bit closer, or maybe cut it in halves and look inside. Ooh, in fact, do I have a knife? Oh yeah, there's a knife. Just for fun, you can look inside, just see what you see. One thing I think is kind of cool is that I can see these little white streaks in here that look as though they're going out to each of the seeds. So now I'm wondering about that, and I want to investigate that more. You can see it really well on this one. Yeah. Or maybe an apple. I don't know, anybody who has stone fruits, I think you're very lucky. So that's my suggestion, is just to look inside. And if you have a particular favorite, look it up online and see what it looks like from the plant that it comes from. See what the flowers look like. If you can't see them in person, then look it up. What do strawberry flowers look like? What do nectarine flowers look like? What does a nectarine tree look like? What do the leaves look like? Just get curious. And just for fun, I got one of these so that we can see. I'm curious to know. Remember how I was saying earlier that with some of the cherry blossoms, they cultivated them so that we didn't really have any fuzzy center on the inside? I'm curious to know if it's the same with these roses. So who wants to see me dissect this rose? Yeah, okay, let's see what it looks like on the inside. Some other time I'll have to count the petals, but not today. Okay, sorry, beautiful rose, but I'm gonna make potpourri out of you later. So we have our beautiful petals coming off. It's a lot more than 5.
So I did a botanical illustration workshop years ago that a rose was one of a variety of flowers we drew. And someone in the class actually worked at a florist and said that the rose leaves are considered unattractive and they have a special tool to strip the leaves off.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
That's commercial florist for you.
Plot twist. Look, hard to see with my horrible camera, but look, there is a fuzzy center hidden underneath all of those petals. I guess they could not take all of the rose out of the rose. Can you see it, sort of?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
We do have fuzzy center. And this one seems to have less of a hypantheum than some of the others, but yeah, you can still see that it has a little bit of a cup, little bit. Yeah. Cool. Still smells good. Okay, so I think that is my workshop. Does anybody have any questions?